we've got our eyes for our viewers who may just be joining us right now. We've got our eyes on the National Gallery in Ottawa. You are looking at Prime Minister Mark Carney walking through the National Gallery alongside Louise Arbour, who has been confirmed by CBC Radio Canada to be the incoming Governor General. That announcement set to take place in just a matter of minutes right now. Yes, Catherine, please.
I was just going to say, Arthi, because I'm based in Ottawa and I've spent some time at the National Gallery, it's one of my favorite places in the city. The actual design is that you are coming up a ramp as you enter that main space, and I believe the architect's intention was it is supposed to be a sort of an ascent. You clear your mind, you can see Parliament, you look out over the city as you get ready to take in these works of art. Well, now, perhaps a clearing of the mind as they prepare for an important political moment here, and certainly for Louise Arbour, an interesting new addition to that very considerable CV.
That's some important context as we take a look at the scene here and, of course, where all of this is happening. We know that the previous Governor General, Mary Simon, held that role since July 2021. The Prime Minister is up at the microphone. Let's listen in.
Bonjour tout le monde. Nous sommes réunis ici sur le territoire traditionnel
on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. And that recognition of this territory shows the common history of the people of this country. We wanted to pursue truth and reconciliation together through our actions as well as through our words.
We're gathering this morning at the National Gallery of Canada. A few blocks away from here, at the then Clarendon Hotel, 146 years ago, the first exhibition was held of the Canadian Academy of the Arts. That academy was the dream of the then Governor General, the Marquess of Lorne, and his wife, Her Royal Highness Princess Louise. They believed that a young confederation needed institutions through which it could see itself and through which it could be seen by the world. 388 works hung in the Clarendon that evening, and those works would become the seeds of this gallery, which today holds more than 17,000 works of Canadian, Indigenous, and global art. Canada was built on the foundations of three peoples: Indigenous, French, and British. Indigenous peoples mapped this continent, sustained its lands and waters, and built trading networks from coast to coast to coast for thousands of years before any European arrival. The French built a society shaped by river and forest, by partnership with Indigenous nations, and by a determination to flourish in a new world. When the British came, that civilization did not disappear. It suffered, but endured, and in time it grew into the federation that we know today. Let's be clear, that founding was imperfect. It excluded too many. It was built in part on the dispossession and broken promises to Indigenous peoples. But that founding contained an insight that has carried us forward, that unity does not require uniformity, that our differences are a strength to be nurtured, not a risk to be managed. That insight has been sustained and then reinforced, generation after generation, by our institutions: Parliament, the courts, the Crown, the treaties, the Charter, the public service, a free press.
Thanks to these institutions, as such a vast and diversified country as ours, we have managed not only to remain united, but to prosper. In a less civilized and more dangerous world, those institutions are now more important than ever.
A year ago, His Majesty King Charles opened our Parliament with a speech from the throne, the first time in nearly 70 years that Canada's sovereign had done so in person. The Crown is a continuous thread through our constitutional life. It is, as His Majesty himself said, a symbol of Canada in all her richness and dynamism. and the Governor-General, is the Crown's representative in Canada, Commander-in-Chief of the Canadian Armed Forces, steward of our traditions of peace, order, and good government. And above all, the Governor-General is the guardian of our constitutional order. The most demanding part of that role is rarely seen. It's the duty to ensure that government in Canada is formed, sustained, and, when the time comes, dismissed in accordance with law and convention. It's a duty that calls for sound judgment, deep learning, and an unwavering commitment to the rule of law. That is the office. And it is the office to which I have asked His Majesty to appoint a Canadian whose entire life has been dedicated to that very principle. I'm very pleased to announce that on my recommendation, His Majesty has approved the appointment of the Honourable Louise Arbour as the 31st Governor-General of Canada. Née à Montréal, Louise
Born in
Arbour
Montreal,
a fait ses
Louise
études à
Arbour
l'Université de Montréal.
studied at the University of Montreal. She was admitted to the Quebec Bar in 1971 and in the Ontario Bar in 1977. She began her career as a researcher at Osgoode Hall and as a fervent defender of civil liberties in this country.
Louise Arbour was appointed to the Supreme Court of Ontario, as it was then known. In 1990, she was appointed to the Court of Appeal for Ontario. In 1999, she was appointed to the Supreme Court of Canada. One of Canada's most demanding judicial careers, more than enough for one lifetime. That career would serve only as the foundation for what came next, because her most consequential work as a jurist was beyond the Canadian courtroom. In 1996, Louise Arbour was appointed by the United Nations Security Council as Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Tribunals for the former Yugoslavia and for Rwanda, the first international criminal tribunals since Nuremberg. She inherited two institutions that many believed could not succeed. She made them succeed. Under her leadership, the tribunal secured the first conviction for genocide since the adoption of the Genocide Convention in 1948. The Akayesu judgment, which also established for the first time that sexual violence can constitute a weapon of genocide and a crime against humanity. And in 1999, in the middle of a war, she signed the indictment of a sitting head of state, Slobodan Milosevic, for crimes against humanity and violations of the laws of war, something that had never been done before. Un nouveau précédent pour la justice
A new precedent for justice and a lack of favoritism. This is not about technical prowess. Her achievements are the foundation of a modern state and a modern system where no one, whoever that person may be, however well protected he may be, is beyond the reach of the law.
Is the foundation of Canadian citizenship. We're a country whose civic identity is grounded in the universality of rights, that what is owed to one of us is owed to all of us. And what is owed to a Canadian is owed, in our tradition, to every human being, whether or not they have the great good fortune to live here. In 2004, Louise Arbour left the Supreme Court of Canada to become United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. For 4 years, she gave voice to those whose dignity was denied, in places where the powerful preferred silence. She did not flinch, and she never confused being heard with being safe. Il existe une troisième file conducteur dans la
There
carrière de
is another part of Ms. Arbour's career, and this one is not as often mentioned, but just as important. 3 times, Louise was asked to look at an institution that had not met its obligations to the people it was responsible for, and to find the necessary measures to remedy the situation. In 1995, Ms. Arbour presided over the inquiry with respect to the women's prison, and her work made it possible to modernize practices affecting women in Canada. As Commissioner, she asked the system to show itself worthy of the respect of the people it chose to serve. In 2022, when she had finished her study, she drafted and filed a report on issues in the Canadian Armed Forces. Her recommendations are currently being implemented, and they will redefine Canadian military justice.
Her work matters in and of itself. It also tells us something about what Louise Arbour will bring to Rideau Hall. The conviction that institutions are the load-bearing walls of a civil society, and that they remain trustworthy only as long as someone is willing to hold them accountable. Louise Arbour has held nearly every office a Canadian jurist can hold, and several that no Canadian has held before. She has been recognized with nearly 100 honors and awards, including 42 honorary doctorates from universities around the world. She is a companion of the Order of Canada, our country's highest civilian honor. But the measure of her career is neither in the offices she has held nor the awards she's received. It's in the lives she has changed through her service. Survivors of genocide who saw justice in their lifetimes. Women in prisons in Canada whose conditions were improved because she said what no one else would say. Members of our armed forces who can serve today with greater dignity because of the report that she wrote. Des millions de personnes
Millions of persons whose rights are now better protected because somewhere an institution that Louise Arbour contributed to build profited from her work. Millions of people who have benefited from the norms that she established. That is the service. A service based on principles.
Across more than 5 decades, in every role she's held, the Honourable Louise Arbour has carried the same conviction, that a free society depends on institutions properly being held to account, that the law stands between power and the powerless, that the dignity of every person should not be a product of the accidents of geography, citizenship, or convenience, and that Canada's place in the world is to be a country that lives those propositions and helps others to live them as well. A deeply Canadian conviction, one that's older than our charter and broader than our borders. It runs through our public life, from the person's case to the patriation of our Constitution, from the building of Medicare to the building of the United Nations. C'est la conviction qu'une communauté
It's the conviction that a community is more than the parts, and it is through this commitment that we can live together. This is something to which Louise Arbour devoted her life, and this will be invaluable as she fulfills the duty she is about to undertake.
We observe that Madame Arbour will succeed an exemplary Governor-General. Her Excellency, the Right Honourable Mary Simon, has been a steadfast representative of Canada and our institutions at home and around the world. As the first Indigenous person to serve in this role, she's carried forward a lifetime of advocacy for Inuit rights, for Indigenous self-determination, and for the preservation of our Indigenous languages, cultures, and identities. Elle nous a rappelé que la
She
réconciliation
reminded
est une
us
responsabilité
that
à vivre
reconciliation
chaque jour.
is
Dans notre
a
manière
responsibility
d'écouter,
to be
d'apprendre,
experienced
d'agir.
every day.
De plus, Madame Simon
Also,
s'est fait
Ms.
la
Simon
championne de
was
l'alphabétisation et de l'éducation.
champion of literacy and
Qu'elle
education,
considère comme les fondements
which she
de notre
considers to be the foundation of
Son
our
leadership a
determination.
aussi contribué à
Her
mettre
leadership
l'enjeu
also
de la santé
contributed
mentale
to
au haut de notre
highlight
agenda national,
the
en particulier
mental health
dans les communautés
issues
nordiques
within northern and indigenous
Elle a su
communities.
mettre en lumière
She
les
was able
difficultés
to
trop souvent
highlight
négligées.
the problems that are too often neglected and therefore gave a voice to so many people who are suffering and who are too often ignored. Her legacy will endure, not only thanks to her service to the nation, but also thanks to the way she fulfilled her mission with elegance, with determination, and with a full commitment to this country.
General Simon, to His Excellency Whit Fraser, to your family, thank you for your extraordinary service to Canada. At a time when much of the world is buffeted by crises and the worst are full of passionate intensity, Canada's history, our institutions, and our enduring traditions matter more than ever. We retain our convictions. We reinforce our institutions. As Mary Simon has, Louise Arbour will represent the best of Canada to Canadians and to the world. A country that's a bastion of security, prosperity, and justice, a beacon to a world lost at sea. A Canada that is clear-eyed about the challenges we face and steadfast in the values we uphold. A Canada that's not just strong, but good. A Canada that's not just prosperous, but fair. A Canada that is not just for some most of the time, but for all of the time. Madame Arbour, au nom du gouvernement du Canada,
Ms. Arbour, on
et au
behalf
nom
of the
de
government of
l'ensemble de la
Canada
population
and
canadienne,
all the
merci
people of
d'avoir
Canada,
accepté
thank
de
you
servir
for
notre
agreeing
pays
to serve
une
our
fois
country
de plus.
once
It's
again.
my pleasure to introduce the 31st Governor General of Canada, the Honourable Louise Arbour. Madame.
Bonjour à tous et à toutes.
Hello,
Et
everyone.
Monsieur le Premier ministre, permettez-moi tout
And
d'abord
Prime
de vous
Minister, let
remercier
me
pour
begin by
cette
thanking you
présentation
for
très
that
élogieuse à mon
very
égard.
wonderful presentation, but also for your confidence in me.
Je tiens à exprimer ma
I want to
gratitude à Sa
express
Majesté
my
le Roi
gratitude to
pour cet honneur et pour
the
l'occasion
sovereign for this
de servir le Canada.
opportunity to serve Canada in this role. I also want to point out the extraordinary role played by Mary Simon, who served our country with tireless devotion. She represented all Canadians with dignity and compassion.
Canada is a wonderful country, shaped by its diversity of people, of perspectives and experiences, but I think shaped also mostly by a common respect for strong public institutions and for the rule of law. Above all, we all strive to provide for each other in a spirit of equality and generosity. I'm very mindful of the legacy that I'm stepping into. J'accepte ces responsabilités
I
avec un
accept
sens
this
profond du
responsibility
devoir.
with a deep sense of duty at a time when Canadians are confronted with complexity and change. Aware of this reality, I think we must develop the necessary tools to meet those challenges and reaffirm our confidence in each other. The strength of this country resides in stable institutions managed with wisdom and sustained through the desire for the well-being of our country and all the planet. This will be a great honor for me to represent Canada and to celebrate our successes. It will also be a privilege to be present if we end up facing adversity. And I'm fully confident in the ability to serve as Chief of the Canadian Armed Forces. I have a great deal of respect for the service and professionalism of the men and women who serve, and it will be a huge honor for me to serve in that role.
I will strive to serve with honor, dedication, and integrity. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, après,
We are both ready to answer your questions.
Première question, Ashley Burke.
Good morning, Madame Arbour. Prime Minister Ashley Burke, CBC News. There's an expense program for former governors generals that allows them to claim up more than $200,000 a year, and that's on top of their expenses. And the reimbursements last year totaled more than $550,000. A Privy Council report in 2019 said there wasn't enough transparency around this, that Canadians should know exactly how that money is being spent and by who, and it called for more transparent public reporting. Do you think this program should continue? And if so, will you commit to ensuring that there is more, the details about how this money is spent and by who will be made public?
Well, thank you very much for that question. I'm not familiar with the details that you're quoting. I'll look into it, ensure that, as you say, that there's adequate transparency around the expenses. I'll just observe that the Governor Generals have served our country with distinction. And in the cases in their post time after being Governor General, continue to serve Canadians through their charitable and other foundation activities, for which I'm personally grateful, and I think all Canadians are as well. Thank you.
Do you think that the details of that should be public? And to both of you, what is the Governor General's role right now, do you think, in promoting national unity at a time when it looks like there could be a referendum on separation in Alberta, and as well a party that wants one in Quebec could return to power?
Shall I? I'll begin. I think I answered the first part of your second question. We'll follow up with you. With everybody, transparently. In terms of the Governor General represents all Canadians, and I think very importantly represents what's at the heart of our institutions and the spirit of Canada, that we're all equal. The rule of law applies to everyone, the powerful as well as the powerless. That we believe in democracy and the processes. So with respect to the many great strengths of this country, they're as appreciated in my home province of Alberta as they are appreciated across the territories where I was born and across this great land. And the Governor General's role is institutional in the sense of very clear constitutional responsibilities that are called into need from time to time, but also to represent Canada at home, best of Canada to Canadians and abroad.
Next question.
I can only echo first the constitutional role of the Governor General, which I think is a very important part of the function. But beyond that, I think there is a space for the Governor General to be conducive of Canadian dialogue with respect to I've mentioned the diversity of our people, diversity of views, of opinions, of experiences, but all that, I think, in a spirit of respect and moving the country forward in an ambitious, united way.
Next question, Laurence.
Oui, bonjour, Laurence Martin de Radio-Canada.
Laurence Martin, I have a question for both of you. You are francophone. Your predecessor did not speak French. Do you believe that was a mistake by Mr. Trudeau to appoint someone who was bilingual but did not speak French? I'll begin. I think it is a good choice now to have Ms. Arbour as our 31st Governor General of Canada. Yes, it is important that there be bilingualism within all the federal government's institutions. Was it a mistake by Mr. Trudeau? Ms. Simon, as I just said, I began to explain the many contributions made by Ms. Simon to this country, which are very important when it comes to reconciliation, mental health, and representing Canada right around the world. We will build on the foundations of the last 30 governors general. Ms. Arbour, I already mentioned that, first of all, I have a great deal of respect for all the people who came before me in this role. I have a great deal of respect and a lot of admiration for the work done by Ms. Simon, and I have no opinion on the decisions that were made with respect to the choice that was made previously.
Monsieur Carney l'a dit, vous allez représenter la couronne.
Mr. Carney said you represent the British Crown here in Canada. Do you consider yourself to be a monarchist, Ms. Arbour? Well, I don't really know what that term is supposed to mean. I will give you a legal and constitutional answer. I will serve as the representative of the Crown in a constitutional monarchy based on a parliamentary system, in a constitutional arrangement that has very well served Canada, particularly in recent years, and I'm quite convinced that this will continue to be the case.
I forget the question.
Can someone repeat the question in English, please?
Yes. Yeah. Am I a monarchy? Well, I started by saying that this term is unfortunately very often used in a pejorative way. What I can say is that I will accede to a function in which I will be the representative of the Crown in a constitutional arrangement that I think has served Canada extremely well throughout our history, but even more in recent decades. I think a system that will continue to provide continuity in our institutions and our form of governance.
Next question, prochaine question. Risa?
Good morning, Raisa Patel, the Toronto Star. Prime Minister, you said in your recent trip to Armenia that it's your strong personal view that as the international order will be rebuilt, it will be rebuilt out of Europe. What did you mean by that? Do you see a future where Europe overtakes the U.S. as the center of the world order?
Well, I think there's a direct line to what we're celebrating today. I think we are celebrating the constitutional role of the Governor-General. And other Canadians are celebrating Madame Arbour's willingness to serve in that role, which is a belief in democracy, the rule of law, that we're all equal before that law. And imperfectly, the international system had variants of that. Madame Arbour's part of her very distinguished career was to make sure that those who transgressed in the most egregious ways those rules, norms, standards were prosecuted and brought to justice. That system, as I've observed in the past, and I'm not alone in making these observations, has been greatly weakened and needs to be rebuilt, and rebuilt perhaps in a different way, but rebuilt based on the same principles. And Canada, the European Union, the United Kingdom, Australia, other countries share very firm convictions with those principles, and we will work together to rebuild. And obviously there's a critical mass in Europe of countries, 27 members of the European Union, but then a broader grouping that you saw in that meeting in Armenia, over 50 countries that have some form of association with Europe and either fully support or are moving towards those principles. So that's what I meant by those comments, and I stand by them.
Follow-up?
Alberta separatists say they have more than 300,000 signatures to potentially trigger a referendum vote. What will you do to stop that referendum from winning?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is there's, again, keeping with the discussion today, there's the rule of law, there's the Clarity Act, which has been opined upon by the Supreme Court. Not at the same time when Madame Arbour was sitting on the Supreme Court, but has been the judgment passed there, and any referenda in any part of Canada need to be consistent with that. As you know as well, there's a judicial, you may know, there's a judicial challenge separately but relatedly by Indigenous nations in Alberta regarding the question. So those processes have to be followed through. But if you bring it into, so I'm observing that because of the solemnity of the moment that we're observing today and celebrating today. But if you bring it into my day-to-day responsibilities and those of the government, it's to continue to act as we have from the start, which is in the spirit of cooperative federalism, making the country work, making it work for Albertans, making it work for Indigenous peoples, making it work for all Canadians. Thank you.
Next question, prochaine question.
Bonjour, ici Raphaël Pirot du Journal de Québec. Question pour vous deux.
I have a question for both of you. Ms. Arbour, you are someone who is quite frank, and you criticize Donald Trump's government on Radio-Canada, saying that the invasion of Iran was pure folly. And in that regard, I'd like you to talk about how you think the U.S. government will react to your appointment. Do you not fear losing your ability to speak out in this new role? In the past, I have held many offices within the United Nations, and of course as a jurist and justice. And in some periods of my life, I was a citizen who had full freedom of expression, and there are privileges and powers that come with certain duties as well as certain constraints, and I can fully accommodate them. Now, I believe that public personalities also fully understand that environment. You can have expressed opinions in a certain context that are not opinions that you would want to highlight in an official context. So I think people fully understand the difference between private comments and positions that you're taking as part of your office. Mr. Carney, yes, I think that was a perfect answer from Ms. Arbour. So do you think the Trump government will try and fight back against this appointment? Well, I believe that the President observed, to much applause, that the United States is founded on the rule of law, human rights law, and it's the same principle that applies in the Canadian way that we are reinforcing today. So that's my answer.
In English, I think you understood the question. So, you know, as His Majesty King Charles observed just last week when he spoke before Congress to great applause, that the United States is a country founded on the rule of law, the right of individuals, and this is what we are reinforcing, celebrating today, an institution at the core of our constitutional system, with someone whose entire career has been dedicated to those principles, coming into such a responsibility at a crucial time. Thank you.
Prochaine question. Next question.
Hi, good morning. Cameron Ryan with CPAC. My question is to Madame Arbour. You authored a report 4 years ago on sexual assault in the Canadian Armed Forces, and you issued 48 recommendations stemming from your investigation. In the 4 years since then, have you seen any progress in how the military treats sexual assault cases and the culture in the forces you called out in that report? You're now the Commander-in-Chief of the Canadian Armed Forces. Will that be an issue that will be a priority for you as Governor General?
I have to say I haven't followed developments, and I wasn't in a position as a citizen to follow the developments with the same level of scrutiny than I did when I issued that report. The report speaks for itself. As to whether there have been initiatives, both formal and informal, this is out in the public domain. I don't have particular insight.
Si je vous permettez, just to add, 47 of the 48 recommendations of Madame Arbour report have been implemented. There is one that is outstanding. which is one of the core, I referred to it obliquely in my remarks, which is the change to military tribunals, military justice, and that is before Parliament in Bill C-11, and it is an absolute priority. It's been from the start, which is why the government introduced it, and we will put it in place. Yeah.
My follow-up is to the Prime Minister. Premier Smith is in town later this week for the Canada Strong and Free conference. Do you have plans to meet with her and discuss the possible upcoming referendum?
That's funny. I thought she was in town to meet me because, yes, there are plans to meet. And if that's good, if she's here, she can take in other activities. But I'm sure the highlight of her visit to the great city of Ottawa will be a side visit to Nepean, my constituency, but also we're having a meeting that's been settled. I can't remember if it's Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, but it's been arranged. I very much look forward to seeing
Will
her.
referendum talk be on the
that
agenda
was
for
your
you?
follow-up.
Next question. Prochaine question.
Oui, bonjour. Hélène Buzetti, les Coop de l'Information. Ma première question est pour vous, Madame Arbour.
My first question is for you, Ms. Arbour. You had an extraordinary career. Mr. Carney referred to this. You're known as to be a woman who likes action, who's on the ground. You even shortened your stay in the Supreme Court. Now, I'm wondering what you think you can achieve in a position which involves a lot of handshaking, handing out medals, and so forth. Well, you referred to the happiest part of the office. I thought you were going to ask me how I would be able to deal with more serious duties. I will certainly undertake all those duties with enthusiasm and commitment. People ask me the same question when I agreed to become a Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada after spending 3 years in war zones. For journalists who are here, who work on the ground, you understand the adrenaline that goes along with that job. So I've experienced both, and I can say that not only am I serene, but I'm very enthusiastic at the idea of serving Canada in this new office. And I have pretty much the same question for you, Mr. Carney. You talked about her extraordinary professional profile. What do you see in that profile that will serve the cause of the government? Do you see a specific mission for Ms. Arbour in her new role? Thank you for your question, Ms. Buzetti. That's a very important question, but it's not appropriate for me to talk about a special mission because in the mandate of a Governor General, there are a number of different elements, anticipated as well as unanticipated. And it's important to say that it's important to shake hands and hand out medals. That is an aspect of Canada to celebrate this country. And it's extremely important in my view, that part of the role. You have to be human. Third, there is a constitutional role that's extremely important. From time to time, we observe that role being played during periods of prorogation or during minority governments. It's difficult to anticipate all the possible challenges or constitutional crises that could occur in a mandate. So obviously we have the chance to take advantage of someone especially able to fulfill the role. And I will have an opportunity to have very in-depth conversations with Ms. Arbour in private on issues that affect Canada and the rest of the world. This is a pivotal moment for this country.
David Aiken, Global News. Good afternoon and congratulations, Madame Arbour. I would like to ask, your resume was awfully impressive and the Prime Minister certainly finds it impressive. And yet at times there have been political parties in this country who've taken issue with your work. And I'm going to reference the comment in 2008 of the Treasury Board President at the time, Vic Taves, who after you concluded your work with the UNHCR called you, and I'm quoting from his words in the House of Commons, disgusting. And just yesterday, a senior aide to former Prime Minister Harper, Howard Anglin, also former Chief of Staff to Jason Kenney, tweeted out, anybody but Arbour. So there's a point here is there's conservatives in this country who took issue with you as a, quote, judicial activist and so on, and human rights. And I wondered how you might bridge or seek to make bridges with conservatives who might not be so happy with your appointment. And I think you were probably, Prime Minister, you were probably at the Bank of Canada at the time. I wonder if you'd taken notice of Mr. Tave's comments and what you think about conservatives who didn't seem to have much respect for Ms. Arbour's work at the UNHCR. Madame?
Well, I can tell you that, as I said before, we live in a country where there's a great free space for expression of contrary views, at times expressed in very robust fashion, and I have immense respect for that process. I will reach out not only to those who agree with me. The kind of cheerleading mode, I think, is not always conducive to change and to progress. I will reach out to anybody who wishes to engage with me, to debate, to discuss. I will listen, and I hope in due course that I will manage to persuade those, particularly those who may doubt my integrity, that I'm not sure I could do much more to try to persuade them otherwise on the basis of what I've done before. But going forward, yeah, I will engage.
Thank you.
I'll make three observations. One is, sorry, don't want to shortchange you, David. Right. The first is that I think history has shown that the judgments of the UNHCR at the time, how correct they were, the crimes against humanity and others that were addressed. The first observation. The second is I don't want to extend into a partisan characterization of this. This is an institution that belongs to all Canadians, all political parties, but truly all Canadians. All Canadians today and in the future, too, because what we do with the institutions we serve resonates down through the years, and it's part of what I referred to in my remarks in French about the example and how the institutional change that Madame Arbour has brought isn't just about the institution, but the norms and the standards that have changed. And my third observation is that the sun is shining. It's spring. It's a time of hope, confidence, dignity, and a bright future for our country. Thank you.
And perhaps I'll close with a question. This is from Madame Arbour, sort of a big picture. Think about things. You were born in Montreal. Louise Saint Laurent was the Prime Minister. Queen Elizabeth II was about to appoint the first ever Canadian Governor General, Vincent Massey. You'll be the first Governor General to be appointed by a monarch other than Queen Elizabeth, which is quite remarkable. We've had the Bill of Rights in your lifetime. The Charter has come in your lifetime. I wondered if you, and we're now looking at a Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces who's a Quebecer, and the Chief of Defense Staff is also a Quebec woman. It's quite a series of changes in your lifetime, and I wonder if you'd care to reflect on the change in leadership here in Canada through those years, and if you have some thoughts about, was the Charter a bigger deal than the Bill of Rights? I caution you'll get in trouble with conservatives on that answer, but go ahead.
Well, you know, I'm not going to get into trouble right now because I'm going to give myself, if you'll allow me, the next few weeks before I actually assume my functions to reflect on many of this historical trajectory, where we came from, where we are today. I'm much more interested also in where we're going and what's ahead of us. But please just give me time to reflect on all that. And I hope to have something a little more fully baked for you in the future.
Merci.
Thank you. This puts an end to our press conference. C'est ce qui met fin à notre conférence de presse. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. We'll go this way.
There we had the